AITA for not letting my MIL see my baby until I put cameras up in my home. 4 months ago, my husband and I welcomed our baby boy into the world. I'm 25, and he's 27, and we've been navigating this new chapter of parenthood together. It's been beautiful, exhausting, and everything in between. For the most part, we've been on the same page about how we want to raise our son. But there's one major source of conflict that has tested my patience and, frankly, my sanity: my mother-in-law. Let me start by saying that my MIL is the type of person who clings tightly to old-school parenting methods. You know the kind. She spanked her kids, let them cry it out as babies, and has some pretty outdated views on what's best for children. I've tried to approach these differences with respect, but her insistence on imposing her beliefs on me has been grating, to say the least. From the very beginning, I've made it clear that I do not share her views and will not be raising my child the way she raised hers. My husband has backed me up on this, but his approach has always been a little more passive, while I've been much more direct. One thing that particularly irked me was her obsession with putting cereal in a baby's bottle. She mentioned it to me a few weeks ago, claiming it was something she did with all her kids, and they turned out just fine. She said it helps babies sleep longer and keeps them fuller. I firmly told her, no, we're not doing that. I explained that it's not recommended by pediatricians, it increases the risk of choking or aspiration, and it's just not safe. My husband also told her we wouldn't be doing that, and I explicitly said that she would not be doing it either. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. This past Saturday, after what felt like weeks of sleepless nights, I decided to take a much-needed nap while my husband was at work. My mother-in-law was over, and she offered to watch the baby so I could get some rest. Honestly, I hesitated. I've never completely trusted her judgment when it comes to taking care of our son, especially with the way she constantly undermines our parenting choices. But exhaustion got the better of me. I was running on fumes, and the idea of lying down, even for just an hour, was too tempting to pass up. Against my better judgment, I reluctantly agreed, reminding her to stick to the routine I had established and to call me if she needed anything. I headed upstairs, laid down, and fell asleep almost instantly. About an hour later, I woke up, feeling groggy but refreshed enough to check on things. I went downstairs, expecting to find my baby content in his playpen or perhaps being rocked in her arms. Instead, what I walked into sent a shockwave of anger and disbelief through my entire body. There she was, sitting casually on the couch like nothing was wrong, holding a bottle filled with some kind of pastel-colored liquid. At first, I thought I must have been imagining things, but as I got closer, I realized the horrifying truth: she had crushed up Fruit Loops and mixed them into my baby's bottle. Fruit Loops. For my 4-month-old baby. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. I froze in place for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Was this real? Was she seriously doing this after I had explicitly told her not to? My shock quickly turned into fury. Without thinking, I marched over to her, snatched the bottle out of her hand, and stared at her, seething. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. She barely flinched. Instead, she gave me this smug, almost condescending look and shrugged. "Oh, relax," she said dismissively, waving a hand like it was no big deal. "He's fine. This is what I did with all my kids, and they turned out okay." That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I've never felt rage like that in my entire life. I didn't yell, I exploded. I told her, in no uncertain terms, to get out of my house immediately. I wasn't going to stand there and argue about the basics of parenting with someone who had blatantly ignored my instructions and jeopardized my baby's safety. But, of course, she didn't go quietly. She tried to argue, saying, "This is my son's house too. You can't just kick me out." Her audacity was almost laughable, if I hadn't been so furious. I didn't back down. I told her that if she didn't leave immediately, I would call the police to remove her. I was dead serious, and I think she could see that because, after some more huffing and puffing, she finally grabbed her things and walked out. But her drama didn't end there. She didn't drive away. Instead, she parked her car across the street and just sat there, sulking and staring at our house. She stayed there for nearly an hour until my husband came home from work. When he got home, she immediately switched on the waterworks, tears streaming down her face as if she were the victim in this entire ordeal. She launched into her version of events before he even had a chance to put his things down, sobbing dramatically about how I had treated her horribly, and kicked her out over something that, in her words, wasn't a big deal. She played the role of the wounded grandmother to perfection, painting me as an irrational, overreacting villain. It was almost impressive how quickly she twisted the situation to make herself the center of sympathy. To his credit, my husband didn't completely fall for her act. He let her finish her little performance, then calmly told her that she was in the wrong. He reminded her that we had explicitly told her not to put anything in the baby's bottle, and that her actions had crossed a line. At first, I felt a flicker of relief that he was backing me up, but that relief was short-lived. Because then he dropped a bombshell I wasn't at all prepared for. He admitted that he had already caught her trying to do this last week and had asked her to stop. My entire body stiffened as his words sank in. Last week? She had done this last week, and he hadn't told me? My head whipped around to face him, my anger immediately shifting from her to him. Wait, what? I asked, my voice rising. She did this before. And you didn't think it was important enough to tell me? He looked uncomfortable, like a kid caught sneaking candy before dinner. I thought I handled it, he said, as if that somehow justified keeping it from me. I told her not to do it again, and I thought she understood. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You thought she understood? Clearly, she didn't, because here we are. I was furious, my voice shaking as I tried to keep my composure. I felt blindsided and betrayed. This wasn't just about her crossing boundaries anymore, it was about him failing to tell me something that directly impacted the safety of our baby. How could he think it was okay to keep me in the dark about something so serious? I let him have it. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that his failure to tell me about the first incident was absolutely unacceptable. This wasn't some minor disagreement about parenting styles. This was about someone blatantly disregarding our rules and putting our child at risk. By not telling me, he had essentially allowed her to think that her actions had no real consequences, and now we were dealing with the fallout. I told him that I was furious with both of them, and I meant it. At that moment, I felt like I couldn't trust either of them to have my back when it came to protecting our son. That was the moment I decided my MIL was done. Officially, completely, done. I told her, right then and there, that she had lost any and all privileges to be around my baby unsupervised. She had not only violated my trust but also demonstrated that she had no intention of respecting our parenting decisions. I told her that she would never be allowed to watch him, or any children we might have in the future, ever again. I didn't care how much she cried or how sorry she pretended to be, the line had been crossed, and there was no going back. And I didn't stop there. I told her she was no longer welcome in our home, period. I didn't want her coming over, acting like everything was fine, and trying to manipulate her way back into my good graces. She had shown me exactly who she was, and I wasn't going to give her another opportunity to undermine me or endanger my child. My husband, predictably, tried to play peacemaker. He started suggesting ways to smooth things over, or move past this, but I wasn't having it. I told him, flat out, that the only way I'd even consider letting her back into our home was if we installed cameras so I could monitor everything she did, and she was never allowed to be out of my sight when she was around the baby. He said I was being extreme, but I didn't care. In my mind, this wasn't a matter of compromise or family harmony. This was about my child's safety, and I wasn't going to bend on that, not for him, not for her, not for anyone. She had crossed a boundary so severe that it couldn't be undone, and I wasn't about to take any chances. Things escalated even further when she decided to air our dirty laundry in a family group chat. This group includes my parents, my husband's sisters, my sister, and my MIL. She called me controlling, a helicopter parent, and even went as far as calling me a bad mother. It was humiliating and infuriating, but thankfully, my family had my back. My mom and dad both told her she was out of line and needed to back off. One of my husband's sisters also stood up for me, sharing that she doesn't allow their mom to be alone with her daughter either because she once popped her in the mouth for talking back. Of course, the rest of his family took her side. They said I was overreacting because the baby is fine, as if that somehow makes what she did okay. I don't care if my baby is fine, the point is that she deliberately went against my wishes and put my child at risk. That's not something I can just sweep under the rug. I've been called stubborn, overprotective, and unreasonable, but I don't think I'm wrong. My MIL broke my trust in a way that feels irreparable, and I don't see how I can ever feel comfortable letting her near my child again. My husband thinks I should try to move past it for the sake of family harmony, but I'm standing my ground. My baby's safety and well-being come first, and if that makes me a helicopter parent, so be it. I'd rather be overly cautious than regretful. Update 1. It's been a few weeks since the whole Fruit Loops fiasco, and after much thought, frustration, and a couple of heated arguments with my husband, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed cameras in our home. Yes, cameras. I know it sounds extreme to some people, but after what happened, I felt like it was the only way I could even begin to feel comfortable again with my MIL stepping foot in our house. I set up a couple of cameras in the living room, kitchen, and the baby's nursery, anywhere she might interact with my son or have access to him. I even added one by the front door so I could monitor who's coming and going. My husband initially thought I was overreacting, but after rehashing the situation a dozen times and reminding him that he failed to tell me she'd already pulled this stunt once before, he eventually conceded. Honestly, I think he just gave up trying to argue with me because he saw how adamant I was about this. When the cameras were finally up and running, I invited my MIL over, not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed to have a conversation with her about the new rules. She showed up acting like nothing had happened, all smiles and trying to butter me up by bringing over a casserole. I didn't fall for it. I let her settle in for a minute before I sat her down in the living room, where one of the cameras was clearly visible on the bookshelf. I want to talk to you about something, I started, trying to keep my tone calm but firm. I could already see the gears turning in her head as she noticed the camera. Her smile faltered just a little, but she didn't say anything yet. I explained to her, as clearly and calmly as I could, that her behavior during her last visit had completely destroyed any trust one had in her. Every word I spoke was measured because, at this point, I was beyond trying to sugarcoat things or worry about how she might feel. I told her that the only reason she was being allowed back into our home at all was because I now had a way to monitor everything she was doing at all times. I gestured toward the cameras, making sure she understood exactly what I meant. These aren't here to spy on you, I said, trying to maintain an even tone. They're here to ensure that my son's safety comes first, no matter what. Her eyes flicked to the camera perched on the bookshelf, and for a moment, she didn't say a word. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she processed what I was saying. I took a deep breath and kept going, making my expectations crystal clear. I told her that if I saw anything, even the slightest hint of her ignoring our parenting decisions or overstepping boundaries, she would be permanently banned from our home. There won't be any second chances, I said, my voice firm. This is your last opportunity to show us that you can respect our rules and decisions as parents. If you can't do that, you won't be welcome here, and you won't be part of his life. Her reaction was explosive, to say the least. At first, she just sat there, staring at me with wide eyes and her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. For a split second, I thought she might actually apologize or acknowledge the gravity of the situation, but I should have known better. The shock quickly morphed into indignation, and she launched into one of the most dramatic rants I've ever heard in my life. She started by accusing me of treating her like a criminal, her voice rising with every sentence. "I can't believe you think so little of me," she exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. "I've raised 3 kids perfectly fine without anyone watching my every move. Do you see cameras in my house? No. Because I didn't need anyone hovering over me, questioning my decisions." She didn't stop there. She kept going, listing off all the reasons why I was being unreasonable. According to her, I was disrespectful for even suggesting that she couldn't be trusted. Then came the jabs. She leaned forward slightly, narrowing her eyes, and said, "You're too young to know what you're doing as a mother. You think you've got it all figured out, but you don't. You should be grateful to have someone like me around to help you. Do you know how many young mothers would kill to have a mother-in-law who actually cared enough to be involved?" I didn't flinch. I just sat there, letting her dig herself deeper with every word. When she finally paused to take a breath, I calmly told her that this wasn't up for debate. My voice was steady, but I didn't waver. "The cameras are staying," I said, meeting her gaze head-on. "If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to leave and not come back. This isn't about me not trusting you for no reason. It's about what you did. You created this situation when you ignored my explicit instructions and put my baby at risk. This isn't about me being controlling, it's about me doing what any responsible parent would do to protect their child. If that hurts your feelings, then so be it." Her face turned red, and for a moment, I thought she might actually storm out. But instead, she huffed, crossed her arms, and muttered something under her breath about how I was paranoid. She stayed for a little while longer, but her attitude was cold and passive-aggressive the entire time. She didn't ask to hold the baby, didn't offer to help with anything, and barely made any conversation. It was like she was trying to punish me with her silence, but honestly, I was just relieved she wasn't pulling any stunts. Since then, she's been tolerable, but barely. She's clearly still bitter about the cameras and brings them up every chance she gets, usually with some sarcastic comment like, "Careful. The camera might catch me breathing too close to the baby." I ignore her snide remarks because, at the end of the day, the cameras are doing exactly what I wanted them to do, giving me peace of mind. I can see what's happening in my home, and I don't have to rely on anyone else to tell me the truth. My husband has been trying to play the middle ground, as usual. He's been a little more supportive now that he's seen how much calmer I am with the cameras in place, but I know he's still uncomfortable with the whole situation. He doesn't like the tension between me and his mom, but I've made it clear to him that this is non-negotiable. My job is to protect our son, not to keep the peace with someone who clearly doesn't respect our boundaries. So, that's where we're at. The cameras are up, my MIL is on her best behavior, for now, and I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. Do I wish things were different? Sure. But I'm not willing to compromise when it comes to my child's safety, and if that means being labeled paranoid or controlling, then so be it. My baby comes first, and I won't apologize for that. Update 2. Alright, folks, here's the final update, and let me tell you, this one is wild. I honestly didn't think things could escalate further after everything that's happened, but clearly, I underestimated my MIL's ability to be absolutely unhinged. So, after the cameras went up and the rules were laid out, things were tense but manageable. My MIL still made her passive-aggressive comments every time she came over, but she was careful to keep herself in check, at least, that's what I thought. She visited less frequently, which was honestly a relief, and when she did come by, I made sure I was always present and watching. I figured that was enough to keep everything under control. Spoiler, I was wrong. Last week, my husband was at work, and MIL came over during the day. She had been pushing for a visit for a couple of days, claiming she missed her grandson. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured it would be fine since I'd be home the whole time, and, of course, the cameras were still rolling. She brought some store-bought cookies and made her usual attempt at small talk, but something about her vibe felt off. She seemed jittery, her eyes darting around the room like she was casing the place. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just uncomfortable knowing the cameras were on her. Oh, how naive I was. At one point, I had to step into the kitchen to grab something, leaving her in the living room with the baby. I wasn't gone for more than a minute or two, but when I came back, she was standing near one of the cameras on the bookshelf, fiddling with something in her bag. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe she was looking for a tissue or something. But later, when I checked the camera footage, yes, I review the footage because, at this point, trust is non-existent, I saw exactly what she was doing. This woman, this grown adult, was trying to disable my cameras. I kid you not. The footage shows her standing in front of the bookshelf, holding what looked like some kind of small tool, and poking around at the base of the camera. She even tried to twist it off the shelf. Fortunately, I'd secured the cameras pretty well, so her efforts were laughably unsuccessful. She spent a solid 30 seconds messing with it, then gave up and sat back down like nothing happened. When I confronted her about it the next day, she had the audacity to look me straight in the eye and deny everything. No hesitation, no shame, just an outright, "I don't know what you're talking about," with this smug little smirk on her face, like she thought I was bluffing. It was as if she genuinely believed she could gaslight her way out of this, and for a second, I just stared at her, stunned by the sheer nerve of it all. But I wasn't about to let her weasel her way out of this one. I calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and without a word, opened the footage. I turned the screen toward her and hit play right there in the middle of my kitchen. The transformation on her face was almost comical. One moment, she was confident, smug even, and the next, it was like the rug had been pulled out from under her. Her eyes widened, her cheeks flushed a deep red, and her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You could practically see the gears in her head grinding to a halt as she realized she had been caught, and there was no talking her way out of it. I didn't say a word while the clip played. I just stood there, watching her squirm. It was one of the few times in my life where silence felt more powerful than anything I could have said. When the clip finished, she immediately launched into damage control mode, stammering as she tried to explain herself. "I wasn't trying to break it, I was just, trying to see how it worked," she blurted out, her voice shaky. "You know, out of curiosity." I raised an eyebrow and crossed my arms, not even bothering to hide my disbelief. "Curiosity?" I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Because most people carry tools in their purse when they're curious, right? That's totally normal behavior." Her face turned an even deeper shade of red, and for a split second, I thought she might apologize. But no, she doubled down, as she always does. "It was a misunderstanding," she said, trying to sound indignant now. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. You're being paranoid, watching everyone like some kind of prison warden." She gestured dramatically toward the camera in the living room, as if its mere presence was an affront to her dignity. That was the last straw for me. I was done playing nice, done giving her the benefit of the doubt, done with her endless excuses and blatant disregard for boundaries. I straightened up and looked her dead in the eye. "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. You knew exactly what you were doing. You tried to tamper with my property because you don't respect me, my rules, or my decisions as a parent. This was your last chance to show me that you could respect our boundaries, and you failed." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. "I don't care if you're family," I continued, cutting her off. "You don't get to undermine me, endanger my child, or destroy my property. You're done. You are no longer welcome in my home." My voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of all the frustration, anger, and hurt she had caused me over the past few months. She started to protest, her voice rising as she tried to defend herself. "You're overreacting. I didn't do anything wrong. "You're just being crazy and controlling," she snapped, throwing her hands up in exasperation. But I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just pointed to the door and said, "Leave." She huffed and puffed like a petulant child, muttering under her breath about how unreasonable I was and how I was ruining the family. But eventually, she grabbed her things and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the house, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. She was gone, and I wasn't going to let her back in. When my husband got home and I told him what happened, he was stunned, to say the least. He watched the footage himself and couldn't believe what he was seeing. To his credit, he didn't try to defend her this time. He agreed that her behavior was completely unacceptable and said he'd back me up in enforcing the no-contact rule moving forward. I could tell he was hurt, though, not just because of the situation, but because he was finally realizing just how far his mom was willing to go to undermine us as parents. So, that's it. She's officially banned from our home, and I've made it clear that I'm not budging on this. I'm sad it had to come to this, but I refuse to let her manipulative, boundary-stomping behavior put my child or my sanity at risk any longer. The cameras did their job, and honestly, I'm so glad I trusted my instincts and installed them when I did. If nothing else, they gave me the proof I needed to shut this nonsense down once and for all. To everyone who commented on my earlier posts and encouraged me to stand my ground, thank you. You helped me see that I wasn't overreacting, and you gave me the confidence to put my foot down. My home is now MIL-free zone, and for the first time in months, I feel like I can finally breathe again.